Hey everybody, it's Jason with Parallel Reality coming back with you today with an article from The Federalist. This is dated October 10th, and it says, Imagine if our intel agencies targeted more actual terrorists instead of conservative Americans. So you can see by the date, the article comes right on top of what's going on in Israel and the Gaza Strip, and of course, all the protests going on in our country. So I'm only speaking about the United States here, not around the world, even though the protests have been going on around the world, showing like all these people out there cheering on Hamas and saying death to Israel. So, of course, there comes out that question like, hey guys, there's probably some people in those crowds because we know they're coming over a very open border. Probably some people in those crowds you should keep an eye on instead of, people like moms going to, uh, you know, deciding about, what school, like school stuff, like going to school board meetings and, just people going to church, Catholics, like maybe those people aren't the actual problem. I don't think anything's going to change, but it'd be nice if those guys heard that and were like, yeah, oops, oh, our eye is pointed in the wrong direction. It says, imagine if all those counter-terror resources were redirected away from targeting Americans for their political views and aimed at stopping real terrorists. Yeah, imagine that. So let's go into the article. It says the barbaric attack on Israeli civilians over the weekend by Hamas terrorists has left people wondering, as we often do after mass tragedies, how did no one see this coming? As a surprisingly sophisticated, coordinated surprise attack left nearly 1,000 people dead and countless more innocents wounded or kidnapped, anyone can recognize the massive intelligence failure without calling into question who is morally culpable for the invasion. Iran-backed militants attacked civilians from multiple points of entry, hang gliding into a music festival, and dragging the bodies of murdered women through the streets, all effectively live streamed on the internet. It wasn't just an intel failure on Israel's part. As a close ally with an intelligence presence all over the world, the United States also failed to foresee the attack. Yeah, and that's something that's got to be figured out as soon as Israel's done cleaning up what they need to clean up. Got to figure out what the hell happened here. As a senior U.S. military official admitted to NBC News that we were not tracking this. CIA counterterrorism veteran Mark, wow, that's a last name I'm going to butcher, says Mark Polymeropoulos told the outlet that he was stunned that American intel agencies were caught off guard. Intelligence agents operatives, I'm sorry, are fallible, yes. But instead of identifying the threat from Hamas terrorists, the Biden administration was busy sending money to their state sponsors in Iran and employing Iranian conspirators at the Pentagon. Yeah, go look into that story. Click on that here. Just pull up the article. It'll be linked in the description. Yeah, so this is actual like Iranian spy ring going on in DC. That's a good thing to have. That's all we need. Because there's another case that's been keeping America's so-called counterterrorism apparatus busy lately, though. Instead of focusing their efforts on actual terrorists, those abroad and those doubtless infiltrating our porous southern border, the Biden administration has continued and escalated the trend of turning our post 9/11 surveillance state against Americans, spurring them as terrorists for their political beliefs. And thank you, Microsoft Edge. I got it. Get away. All right. So just last week, Newsweek reported that the FBI is targeting Trump supporters as domestic terrorists ahead of the 2024 election. Yeah, because those Trump supporters are real, real violent. Yeah, they're out there uh doing nothing at all, actually. Okay. Alrighty then. Says the universal line from the Biden administration is that domestic terrorism, in quotes, and its aliases, all of which are used as a code for political right wingers, correct, are the number one threat to national security, which they never have been and never will be because they actually love this country. They just don't like you, Mr. President. Says the effort to make an example out of Trump supporters who demonstrated at the Capitol on January 6, 2021 is only one of numerous instances in which Democrats within and beyond intelligence agencies are working to equate domestic terrorism with their political opponents. And none of those people committed domestic terrorism. Even the people it was rioting, it wasn't domestic terrorism. The person who planted bombs outside of the DNC and the RNC the night before, if those were actual real bombs and that wasn't like some sort of psyop, which is what it seems like it was, and those bombs went off, then that would have been domestic terrorism if that person was American. So yeah, but the January 6th stuff was just doesn't fit that definition. But of course, the people running government are leftists, so they're going to redefine words to do what they want them to do instead of the actual definitions. See my apartheid video that have already put out. It should be at the time of listening to this a couple days ago. So it says 2 years ago, Biden's education department infamously planted a letter from the National School Boards Association to Attorney General Merrick Garland, urging him to or to target concerned parents who showed up at school board meetings to protest Democrats' COVID policies and their racialist and sexually graphic curricula in public schools. Oh dear God, no! Parents are concerned about what their kids are learning, and especially when it's like, you know, like R to X, if not like NC-17 or even triple X rated stuff, which they have every right to be concerned about. So it says the letter smeared those parents as domestic terror threats and urged the Department of Justice to wield counterterrorism laws against them, and Garland happily acted on the suggestion. A few months later, the politicized Department of Justice announced a new domestic terrorism unit to deal with an elevated threat from domestic violence extremists, including those who ascribe to extremist anti-government and anti-authority ideologues. It says, who knew the founding fathers were domestic terrorists? Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, the people that founded our country, yeah, they were that. Okay, so what is wrong with being anti-government? I mean, I am, but I'm not going to go do anything about it besides talk about it. This taking a step further, disgraced former Deputy FBI Director Andrew McCabe claimed that targeting the fringes of the right-wing movement, which that's not, was insufficient to catch this threat and instead called for federal suspicion of mainstream conservatives. Yeah, so he's the bad guy. Okay, and plus, again, as it says here, he is a disgraced former Deputy FBI Director. He was one of the Russiagate people, and it turns out he was lying the whole time because everybody that brought it up as an actual thing was lying about it. Anyway, it says in June 2021, the Biden administration released a national strategy for countering domestic terrorism. It proposed to counter domestic terrorism by addressing underlying racism and bigotry. Okay, what group is that? I mean, that's still kind of talking about left wingers there, folks. And they weren't talking about the racism that led Hamas militants to slaughter Israeli civilians this past weekend and has driven violence against Israel in the region for decades. A National Terrorism Advisory System bulletin issued the same year lumped conspiracy theories on perceived election fraud and responses to anticipated restrictions relating to the increasing COVID cases in the same sense as domestic violent extremist ideologues. Well, that is stupid because how do you get those? What? How are those extremist thoughts? Like, more than half the country believes that stuff. There's a significant portion of Democrats that believe this stuff too. So, yeah, that doesn't work. Because our intelligence apparatus expends resources on things like telling big tech companies which free thinking American social media posts to censor, as we discovered via the Twitter files and Missouri v. Biden. It's actively researching how to efficiently surveil what you say online. The FBI has been putting its resources to work targeting and likely infiltrating traditional Catholic congregations and terrorizing peaceful pro lifers like Mark Hook, a pastor who was dragged away in a surprise raid at his home in front of his family. Yeah, you should click on this link to read about this because it's pretty harrowing. It was in front of his children, like had a whole FBI like SWAT team or something do it. And what happened with the guy was basically like they were uh praying at like in a Planned Parenthood or something like that, and some dude tried to accost his son, and he went up to the guy and pushed him to the ground. I think it was something like that, and apparently there's some law that like you can't do that at specifically at like a Planned Parenthood, and you can get like 10 years in prison for it. It was like the dude was protecting his kid. Someone went up to his kid and went after his 12-year-old kid first, and he went, no. Like he was basically defending his kid and got arrested and almost jailed for it. I think he's okay though. So again, read that link. I could be wrong on some of these details. This is not just domestic intel agencies being wielded against Americans. The CIA did its part to help Twitter censor speech, and we know that. Thank you, Elon. And even solicited signatures to help falsely smear damaging reporting about the Biden family as disinformation ahead of the 2020 election. Says for some reason none of those involved are being arrested for conspiracy against voting rights. Yeah, none of those people got in trouble, even though we have proof that this is what was going on. Because across the board, we've seen people we elected and countless bureaucrats we did not weaponizing supposedly counterterror laws like the Patriot Act against Americans' First and Fourth Amendment freedoms, at least. Yeah, probably doing it for all of them. Imagine if those resources were redirected away from targeting ordinary, law abiding Americans for their political views and aimed at stopping actual terrorists who seek to harm us and our allies. And it's not because your president does not care about you or about this country at all, not even much less the people. So it says, contrary to the pretense that surveilling Americans as walking national security threats is for our own protection, our world would be a lot safer. And that is the end of the article. So what do you guys think about this? Oops, did the wrong thing. Do you think our intel agencies should be looking in the correct direction, which is away from people on the right? 'Cause, I mean, if there's obviously someone on the right that's doing something, look at them. But for the most part, Do you think they're looking in the wrong direction? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, share, subscribe, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.